Hello and welcome to the Restart Your Life podcast. I'm your host, Rich Fournier. You know, if you've ever felt like you're capable of more than the life that you're currently living, you're not alone. See, your life can change faster than you think it can when you fully understand how your mind actually works. See, most people aren't stuck because of a lack of information. They're stuck because of the patterns and the unconscious beliefs that are running below the surface. On this podcast, we're going to break down the science of human performance so that you can rewire old patterns, eliminate the beliefs that are holding you back, and you can start creating the results you know that you're capable of. So let's dive in. At some point, probably more than once, someone told you that you are who you are. And maybe it was framed as personality, maybe it was framed as genetics, maybe it was simply the accumulated weight of decades of being the same person, the same patterns, producing the same results, right? And somewhere beneath the ambition that you have, beneath the goals and the vision and the commitment, there is a quiet voice that wonders if maybe they were right. You are who you are. Listen, I'm here today to tell you, with the full weight of modern neuroscience behind me, that those people who told you that you are who you are, they were wrong. Your brain can change. You can change. Not theoretically, not with extraordinary effort over decades, not as a rare exception, structurally, functionally, at the level of neural architecture, you can change. And understand exactly how that change happens. You can understand this. The actual mechanism. The actual mechanism is the difference between pursuing transformation with hope and pursuing it with precision and commitment. See, hope produces inconsistent results. Precision and a committed decision produce predictable ones. And so today we are building the precision. Welcome back to Restart Your Life. So here's the challenge with transformational work, right? And why most of it probably fails is people approach identity change the same way they approach everything else in their performance, with a little bit of intention and effort applied at the surface level. Not really committed to being different. Committed to doing a little bit of work, but not really committed, right? People, they decide to think differently when they make a decision to change, right? They journal a little bit. They maybe do an affirmation one day. They visualize. Well, they don't even do that because they feel weird about it. Maybe they'll attend a seminar and leave with that breakthrough feeling. Oh, that was amazing. That electric sense that something has genuinely shifted. But, then they make the commitment on a Sunday night, right? And by Wednesday, the old patterns have reasserted themselves and they don't do the things that they said they were doing. The old thoughts are running again. The old behaviors are back in place. See, the old results are forming on the horizon because nothing's really changed. And the conclusion most people draw from this cycle is kind of devastating, right? Maybe I can't really change. Maybe this is just who I am. This is my life. These are the results I'm always going to get. I'm here to tell you that conclusion is wrong. But the method that produced it was also wrong as well. You're not setting yourself up for success. So you were not failing to change. You were attempting to change at the wrong level of the system. See, intention operates at a conscious level. Identity lives at the neurological level. And until you understand how to create change at the neurological level, the subconscious level, intention will keep losing to programming. Every single time. So, here's the scientific foundation of everything we teach on this podcast, right? I want you to understand that we're basing everything that we're talking about on research. So in 1949, Canadian neuropsychologist Donald Hebb articulated what became one of the foundational principles of modern neuroscience. It's now known as Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together wire together. So what does this mean in practical terms? Well, here you go. Every thought you think, every behavior you repeat, every emotional response you habitually generate creates and strengthens a neural pathway. I'll say that again. Okay, I want you to hear me. Neurons that fire together wire together. And what this means in practical terms is this. Every single thought you think, every behavior you repeat, every emotional response you habitually generate creates and strengthens a neural pathway. It's a physical, biological connection between neurons in your brain. And the more frequently that pattern fires together, the more myelinated, the more insulated and efficient that pathway becomes. The faster and more automatic that pattern now runs. This is how habits form at the neurological level. This is how beliefs become automatic. This is how the patterns of the old identity become so deeply ingrained that they run without any conscious thinking, any conscious activation. Just like a highway your brain uses automatically because it's the most efficient route available. But here's the other side of the same principle. The side that changes this entire conversation. Neurons that no longer fire together, they start to unwire. They disintegrate. And neural pathways that are not consistently activated, they weaken over time. See, the myelin degrades, the connection loses its efficiency, the pattern loses its automatic response, and eventually it requires effort to run at all. This is neuroplasticity. The brain's documented, scientifically established capacity to physically restructure itself based on what it is repeatedly asked to do. It's not a metaphor. It's not motivational language. It's the biological mechanism by which all lasting change can occur in any human being at any age. And it means at the most fundamental biological level that you are not fixed. The identity that has been running your results is a neural architecture, and neural architecture can be rebuilt. So let me give you maybe a practical framework for how neuroplastic change actually happens, because the mechanism has specific requirements, and understanding is what separates structured transformation from just wishful thinking. Yeah, I'm going to do this thing, but nothing ever changes, right? I'm sure you have never done that. So here's the framework. This is a requirement. Repetition is the mother of skill. I think Tony Robbins said that, right? Repetition is so important. New neural pathways are formed through repetition. A single powerful experience can create an initial pathway, like something amazing happens. Maybe you go to a seminar, maybe you go and you have something that happens, and this awesome, powerful experience can create an initial starting pathway. But then it requires consistent, repeated activation to become strong enough to compete with the existing deeply myelinated pathways of the old identity. This is why a weekend seminar breakthrough, as powerful as the experience is in the room, I've been to many, but they rarely produce lasting change just on its own. See, the emotional intensity creates a new pathway initially, but without the repetition that follows consistently in the weeks and months after, the new pathway kind of remains thin and weak and starts to prune away, right? Because the old, thick, heavily myelinated highways or pathways of the existing old identity continues to dominate all your automatic processing and dominates your behavior. See, repetition is non-negotiable. It has to happen to create neuroplastic change in the brain. It's not a preference, it's a requirement. Number 2, emotion. It's a second requirement to create change. Neuroscience research, including the foundational work of Antonio Damasio on the somatic marker hypothesis, and later, right, the applied work of a well-known name, Dr. Joe Dispenza, on personality change, right? They've demonstrated that emotional intensity dramatically accelerates the formation of new neural pathways. So when a new thought, belief, or behavior is paired with strong, positive emotion, the brain releases neurochemicals, including dopamine, norepinephrine, and acetylcholine. These act as biological highlighters. They signal to the brain, this is important, this thing is important that this person is doing. It literally signals in the brain. This is important, and code this deeply into the brain, make this pathway strong. Now, this is why transformation work that includes experiential components, not just intellectual understanding of concepts, which is super important still. When you combine them both, it produces superior and more lasting results. You got to feel your new identity as real. You must generate the emotional experience of being the next version of you, the one that you create, of operating from the new self-image before the external evidence will ever confirm that you've changed. See, the sequence that most people assume is, right, first get the result, then it's going to feel like then I'll feel like a different person. It's backwards. The neurological sequence that actually produces change is the reverse. First generate the felt experience of being the new person. Then the results follow as a biological output of the new neural architecture. The emotion first, evidence second. There's a third requirement, spaced repetition over time. The science of neuroplastic change indicates or shows that meaningful structural reorganization of the brain's architecture, it requires sustained practice over a period of months, not days, not weeks, right? Research on, I can never say this properly, automaticity and habit formation indicates that the average time to form a new automatic behavior was 66 days plus. For complex identity level changes involving like deeply embedding new belief systems, new values, and behavioral patterns, right? Patterns that have been reinforced, like that have been there for years and years and years. That process requires considerable more sustained effort. So 6 months of structured, consistent, emotionally engaged repetition in a supportive environment, it's not an arbitrary time frame for identity transformation. It's a requirement. The environment, requirement number 4, the environment. Your environment is constantly activating existing neural pathways. So the environment that you're in, the people around you, the where you live, and everything around you is constantly causing you to activate the old identity, to activate existing neural pathways. And the people around you, the spaces you inhabit, the content you consume, the conversations that you participate in daily, they're all triggers for the established or old identity. They are all cues that activate old patterns. This is why willpower-based approaches to change, man, that's why it's so energy intensive. It takes so much emotional energy, and it's really so fragile. You're trying to maintain a new pattern while existing in an environment that is constantly cueing the old patterns, right? Every environmental trigger is a vote for the old identity. And the accumulated weight of all those votes or the cues that are happening in your environment day after day depletes your will. Structural transformation requires intentional environmental redesign. Not necessarily dramatic where you're moving houses and you're kicking people out, but deliberate construction of an environment that supports the new identity and reduces the constant cues of the old identity. So let me try to make this a bit more concrete, right? So we can get lost in the words of this. So here's an example. Think about learning when you learned how to drive, right? What happens? When you first learned, you were literally conscious of every micro action. Checking mirrors. I'm going to date myself here. Managing the clutch or using the brake properly, monitoring the speed, watching for other vehicles, signaling, right? Maintaining lane position. Every single element required deliberate, active, conscious attention. It was cognitively exhausting. In the early stages, it was stressful because the conscious mind was overloaded trying to manage everything simultaneously. But after months of repetition, you can drive now while holding a full conversation, listening to a podcast, thinking through your business strategy. The neural pathways for driving, the level of mind, has become so deeply myelinated, so automatic that it runs as a background process without requiring conscious supervision. You've now become unconsciously competent in a new way of being. Driving. This is neuroplasticity working in the context of a new physical skill. Now you can apply that same mechanism to identity and to business, right? When you first begin practicing a new belief system, right? I choose to believe this. A new self-image or a new way of seeing yourself in the context, well, let's bring it back to performance. It requires conscious effort, right? It feels unfamiliar. The brain flags it now as inconsistent with the established pattern of who I was in the past. This is the internal resistance when you go to create something extraordinary in your life. That uncomfortable sense of friction that most people interpret as evidence that the new belief isn't true. The internal resistance is real. But with consistent, emotionally engaged repetition over time, the new pathway strengthens. The old pathways begin to weaken. What once required effort begins to happen automatically, and the new identity starts to run without conscious supervision. This is how a person who has spent 15 years seeing themselves as someone who earns at a certain level begins to genuinely and automatically, without effort, right? They start seeing themselves as someone who earns at a different level, not because they forced it, but because they rebuilt the identity. They rebuilt the neural architecture and replaced the old self-image. See, the internal experience of money, success, or performance, it's got to change at the subconscious level, at the biological level. And when the internal experience changes, the external results are going to show up differently. It's not a miracle. It's a mechanism. See, you're not fixed. Your brain is not a static organ. It is one of the most dynamic, adaptive, responsive structures in the entire known universe. Think how miraculous you really are. Every single day, right now, today, every single day, you're changing your brain or you're reinforcing who you are through what you think, what you do, what you feel, what you're consuming every day, who you spend time with, and what environment you operate in. So the question is, it's not whether your brain is changing. The question is, are you directing the change intentionally? Or are you allowing the default patterns to control you? The ones that were installed before you had any say in the matter. Running on autopilot since before you were 7 years old. Are you going to allow them to continue to shape your life? See, this is the difference between accidental neuroplasticity and intentionally creating something new. Accidental neuroplasticity, right? It's the one that was given to you. And all of us, well, the vast majority of us who never make massive changes, we keep reinforcing the existing pathways through habitual thought and through habitual behavior. So the existing identity, who I am, gets stronger. The ceiling gets more difficult to break through. The patterns become more automatic. But with intentional neuroplasticity, you systematically create the new conditions through repetition, through emotion, through time, and through environmental support for new pathways to form, and the old ones start to weaken. A new identity will start to emerge, right? See, the path to transformation is a structured 6-month methodology built entirely around intentional neuroplasticity. Every component, the frameworks, the daily repetition structures, the experiential exercises, the coaching conversations, the environmental design elements, the peer accountability is built around creating the precise conditions for real, measurable, and lasting neurological change. It's not motivation, it's architecture. So here is your practice from this episode today. And for the next 7 days, I want you to run one intentional experiment in neuroplasticity. Sounds like fun, isn't it? So I want you to identify the single most important belief that your next version of yourself, what would they believe about themselves? What's the most important thing that that person would believe? What is the single most important belief that your next version self holds about themselves that you don't yet consistently believe about yourself? I want you to write it down precisely, specifically. Not a vague aspiration, but a concrete belief statement in the first person, present tense. Something like, I am someone who consistently operates at a high level and produces results that are proportionate to my capability. Or maybe I'm saying, I'm someone who attracts and closes premium clients naturally and without apology. Whatever is most relevant to your specific identity gap, to your situation. And then every single morning and every single night, I want you to spend 3 to 5 minutes, not just reading that belief, but genuinely generating the emotional experience of it being true, right? Don't just recite the words, create the felt reality of the thing you want to believe. See yourself operating from that belief. Feel what it would feel like to hold it automatically. Generate the emotion because you said so. You can generate emotion at will. I want you to do this for 7 days without skipping. Notice what begins to shift and how you feel when you read it, and the micro decisions you make during the day, and the thoughts that arise automatically. You're not going to rewire identity in 7 days, but you will experience at an emotional level the beginning of a new neural pathway forming. And then you will understand, not intellectually, but experientially, why this work produces what it produces. So if you want to take this work from a 7-day experiment to a 6-month structured transformation, book a discovery call with me at restartyourlife.com. Enjoy the week, and I'll see you in episode 7.